So when the woke right say, yo, the natives took slaves too, the answer is you are correct. However, how did they practice slavery? And was it the same as how slavery was practiced amongst the colonists, amongst the colonizer, amongst the European? Damn near the exact opposite. Niggas can't fuck with me. I got the documentation. Cannot fuck with me. Cannot fuck with me. I will destroy you. This is why I say I don't want to debate nobody, because there's nothing to debate. What's there to debate? There's nothing to debate. We asked Claude to tell us about slave practices among Native Americans and the change to chattel slavery. Pre-contact captivity was real, but operated under completely different logic. The Morning War complex in the Eastern Woodlands, Comanche captive incorporation of the plains, the Pacific Northwest hereditary slave-owning class, and Aztec debt bondage were all distinct systems. None of them mapped cleanly onto the Atlantic chattel slavery. European colonialism weaponized existing systems. The Carolina Indian slave trade was massive. Galley estimates 25 to 51,000 indigenous people enslaved and exported. You see this right here? They talk about the people sold from Africa. But here we have Native Americans enslaved and exported. The French panel system in New France created a hybrid model. Both turned captive taking from warfare byproduct into export commodity. So they talk about Africans leaving Africa, coming to the Americas, but they never talk about the people that were snatched from the Americas and exported to, AKA raids, correct. The shift to African labor was logistical, not moral. The 5 tribes' adoption of chattel slavery is the sharpest inflection point. Cherokee, Choctaw, Chickasaw, Creek, and Seminole nations adopted full plantation slavery with radicalized slave codes, a fundamental break from pre-contact captive systems. This was driven by U.S. civilization programs, strategic assimilation, intermarriage with European Americans, and cotton economics. The Civil War alignments and post-war freedmen citizenship disputes remain live issues today. So right here, what does it say? That those native nations adopted full plantation and slavery with radicalized slave codes, fundamental break from pre-contact captive systems. So yes, they practiced slavery, but it was different form of slavery. This is personhood, right? The difference between the way Africans and indigenous practiced slavery and the way that European chattel slavery was conducted. You cannot compare the two, or you cannot conflate the two. You could adoption into full kinship. Chattel slavery was social death and permanent legal condition enforced by the state with no exit. In most indigenous systems, captive status died with the individual. Children of adopted captives were born as full kin members. You're one of us now. Virginia's 1662 Parta Sequitur Ventrum law made enslavement hereditary through the mother, turning enslaved women's bodies into engines of capital accumulation across unlimited generations. Racial logic. Indigenous captivity was determined by nation, warfare, and kinship, never by phenotype. Chattel slavery was organized entirely around race as a legal and ontological category. Blackness itself became presumptive evidence of enslaved status. Indigenous systems pulled captives up and in toward incorporation. Chattel slavery pushed people down and out toward permanent exclusion from the human community. Authority. Clan mothers and women's council held sovereign authority over captives, matriarchal, fates in matrilineal societies. Chattel slavery was governed by property, law enforced by state, and violence and market pricing. They're now going to say, you're wrong, Hotep Jesus. Here's evidence of natives practicing chattel slavery. The shift began when? in the 1700s. As European settlers established cotton and tobacco plantations in the South, wealthy native elites who intermarried with Europeans or traded heavily with them began purchasing enslaved African Americans. By the 1790s, the U.S. government formalized this shift through civilization policies, spearheaded by federal Indian native agents like Benjamin Hawkins. These policies actively pushed native nations to abandon communal hunting and traditional captive systems in favor of private property, European farming methods, and racialized chattel slavery. So what they'll say is look, here are the natives practicing chattel slavery, but they'll leave out Mr. Hawkins and their policies that push on to the natives that say, yo, fuck the way you do slavery. Marry into us and do things our way. This is the way we're doing things here now. Legal codification. 1819, the Cherokee Nation passed its first formal written laws regulating and protecting chattel slavery, restricting the mobility and rights of enslaved black people. 1824, Cherokee Nation banned intermarriage between Cherokee citizens and black people, enslaved or free. 1827, the Cherokee Nation adopted written constitution that explicitly barred anyone of African descent from attaining Cherokee citizenship or holding public office. Other nations such as Choctaw and Chickasaw followed similar constitutions and codes. So when we present this information on the internet, there are three groups of supremacists that will hate this information. The red woke, FBA, and you got the Native Americans. Because in the early 1800s, the Native Americans became racist. So when you claim your native heritage, you'll get flooded by these Cherokee supremacists and say, you guys weren't natives, you weren't natives. And what you see is you'll see a light-skinned native. When you see those natives out there in Hawaii, what do they call them? The Samoans that have that mixed complexion look. This is post-colonial natives. This is post-colonial natives. This is after the interbreeding and mixing with the European. Presentation over. Shout out to Big Stretch.